4 women, 6 children, and 1 man who avoided responsibility for years until the truth caught up with him in the courtroom. Infertility lies, manipulation, and promises that were never meant to be kept led to a high-profile paternity and child support case. But when all the cards are open, the main question arises. Will he be able to avoid the consequences this time, or will he finally answer for his actions? Chapter 1. Filing a Claim. The courtroom of the Manhattan District Court was filled with the hum of voices until the judge entered the courtroom. Caitlyn Morgan nervously ran her fingers over the edge of her file folder. She had come to New York several years ago, full of dreams of a new life, and now she stood before a judge, trying to prove the obvious that her young daughter, Alexandra, had the right to know her father and receive proper support from him. Meeting Jason Reed changed her life, but not in the way she imagined. She once hoped for a simple career as an interior designer in the big city, not single motherhood and court battles. She took a deep breath as her name was announced. "Miss Morgan, you have the floor," Judge Janice White said evenly, adjusting her glasses. Caitlyn stood up. Her voice was confident, although inside everything was clenching with excitement. "Your Honor, I have filed a paternity and child support lawsuit against Mr. Jason Reed. We had a short affair that got me pregnant. When I told him about it, he promised to help at first, but then he just disappeared. I am raising our daughter alone." From the other side of the hall, a soft, almost mocking laugh rang out. Jason sat cross-legged and pretended that the whole situation didn't concern him. He had the look of a man who was confident that he would be able to get out of any situation. "Mr. Reed, you will have a chance to speak," the judge said sternly. "Go on, Miss Morgan." 2 months later, I found out that I was pregnant. He assured me that he could not have children because he had been married for more than 10 years and his wife could not conceive. I believed him. But after I broke the news to him, he started ignoring me, and I later found out that 3 other women in our company also got pregnant by him and had already won child support cases. The judge raised an eyebrow curiously as she scanned the documents. "Do you mean that the defendant already has court obligations for alimony in relation to other children?" she asked. "Yes, Your Honor, and this is another proof of his irresponsibility," Caitlyn said firmly. The judge turned her gaze to Jason. "Mr. Reed, you have the floor. How would you explain this situation?" Jason sighed theatrically, shaking his head slightly. "Your Honor, this is just some kind of farce. All my life I thought I couldn't have children, and suddenly 4 pregnancies in a row. It looks more like a conspiracy than reality. I think these women just decided to set me up." Caitlyn pursed her lips tightly. She couldn't believe that he was still trying to get out of the water dry. The judge tapped her pencil on the table. "Mr. Reed, DNA testing will decide that. But given your history, it seems to me that the outcome will be predictable." Caitlyn felt her heart skip a beat. It was just the beginning, but she was ready to fight to the end. Chapter 2. Discovery of Other Victims. Caitlyn never thought she would be in a situation where she would be forced to prove the obvious. But what shocked her even more was that she wasn't the only woman who got pregnant by Jason Reed. After she told her co-workers about her situation, the truth began to surface, and the truth was shocking. Lauren Bailey, her colleague who worked in the same atelier as Caitlyn, was the first to talk about her experience. One evening, they stayed after work, and Lauren whispered softly in between conversations. "You're not alone, Kay. He did the same to me." Caitlyn froze. She could not believe that history had repeated itself. "How did it happen?" she asked, although she already guessed the answer. Lauren looked away nervously. He was so convincing. Romantic gestures, promises. He said that he never had a chance to become a father, that his wife could not give birth, that he always dreamed of it. I believed it, and now I am a single mother. Caitlyn closed her eyes. A wave of anger swept over her. Jason used the same story to lure women into his trap. The next day, she learned even more. 2 other women, Sarah Mitchell and Julia Wong, also became victims of Jason. They all worked together. They all heard the same words, the same promises, and they were all left alone with their children, abandoned by a man who could talk nicely but wasn't going to take responsibility. He convinced me that we were perfect for each other, Sarah recalled. I was so naive. He didn't even like me, Julia added bitterly. It was a bet, wasn't it? How quickly can he charm another fool? Caitlyn sighed. He will be responsible for it. I filed a lawsuit. Lauren, Sarah, and Julia exchanged glances. We did too, Lauren said, and we all won. But he doesn't pay, Sarah added grimly. He has no income. Everything falls on the shoulders of his wife. Realizing this was another blow to Caitlyn. But now she knew she was not alone. Together, they will prove that Jason will not get out of the water dry. Chapter 3, Trial. The courtroom was filled with tension that could almost be felt in the air. Caitlyn Morgan sat at the plaintiff's desk, her hands shaking slightly with excitement, but her gaze remained determined. This was the day she would finally make Jason Reed answer for his actions. Next to her sat her lawyer, a self-assured woman named Rebecca Sloan, who was not going to give the defendant any chance of manipulation. On the other side sat Jason. He had the look of a man who was bored. He leaned back in his chair and indifferently turned a pen in his hands. His lawyer, on the other hand, seemed focused, going through the documents from time to time and jotting something down in a notebook. Judge Janice White entered the courtroom and everyone stood. She sat down in her chair and looked over her glasses at the participants in the process. The court is hearing Morgan v. Reed on paternity and child support, she announced, looking through the documents. The plaintiff, Miss Morgan, I am asking you to testify. Caitlyn stood up. She felt her heart pounding in her chest, but she was ready. Your Honor, I am filing this lawsuit because the defendant, Mr. Reed, is the biological father of my daughter, Alexandra. He convinced me he couldn't have children and then disappeared when I got pregnant. I later found out that he did the same thing to 3 other women in my company, all of whom have already won child support cases, but he continues to avoid accountability. The judge turned her gaze to Jason. Mr. Reed, do you have anything to say in your defense? Jason sighed and slowly stood up, pretending to be tired. Your Honor, this is just some kind of madness. I do not deny that I had a relationship with Miss Morgan, but I never promised her anything. It was an adult, conscious agreement, and the fact that she got pregnant. I can't even be sure that this is my child. Caitlyn flinched with indignation, but her lawyer squeezed her hand under the table, signaling her to remain calm. Are you not sure? Asked the judge, looking through the documents. Then explain why 3 other women also won paternity cases against you. Jason hesitated for a second, then shrugged confidently. I'm just very popular. This does not mean that all these children are mine. The hall erupted in muted indignation. The judge hit the table with a gavel. Silence in the hall, she said sternly, and then turned to the plaintiff's lawyer. Miss Sloan, do you have proof of Mr. Reed's paternity? Rebecca Sloan smiled and pulled out the DNA test results from her folder. Your Honor, here are the results of the DNA test. The probability of paternity is 99.9%. Mr. Reed is the biological father of my client's child. For the first time in a long time, Jason lost his indifference. His jaw tightened and his hands clenched into fists. This is impossible, he blurted out. It's even possible, answered the judge coldly, and by law you are obliged to provide for your child. Chapter 4. Results of DNA examination. There was dead silence in the courtroom. Caitlyn sat with her fingers gripping the edge of the table, trying to control her breathing. The results of the DNA test were presented to the court. Now is the moment of truth. Judge Janice White slowly removed her glasses and looked at the documents in front of her. She paused for a moment, as if giving everyone in the room a chance to realize the weight of the moment. Then, turning her gaze to Jason Reed, she announced clearly and loudly, the probability of Mr. Reed's paternity with regard to the minor Alexandra Morgan is 99.9%. There were muffled whispers in the courtroom. Jason leaned back in his chair, feigning indifference, but his fists clenched on the table showed nervous tension. Caitlyn felt her chest finally feel a little lighter. It was irrefutable proof that he could no longer wriggle out. could no longer deny the truth. She turned to her lawyer, and Rebecca Sloan gave a faint nod, saying, "We won this round." The judge tapped her gavel, calling for order. "Mr. Reed, as you can see, the scientific evidence supports your paternity. Do you have something to say?" Jason smiled bitterly as he leaned forward and crossed his arms over his chest. "Okay," he drawled. "Let's say it's my child. What's next? I have no job, no income. What are you going to do about it, Your Honor? Take my soul hostage." His sarcastic tone did not impress the judge. She just looked at him sternly. The law obliges parents to participate in the financial provision of their children. If you are not officially employed, the court has the right to set a fixed amount of alimony based on the minimum subsistence level. If you do not comply with this decision, you can be prosecuted up to and including imprisonment. Jason grimaced but didn't say anything. His lawyer whispered something in his ear, and he just nodded, apparently still not fully grasping the implications. Caitlyn tried to hold back an emotional outburst. She wanted to scream, to demand justice, to remind him of those months when he simply disappeared from her life, leaving her alone at the most difficult moment. But now it doesn't make sense. She has already received the main thing, recognition that her child has a father who will no longer be able to hide from responsibility. The judge continued. "In connection with the results of the DNA test and in accordance with the legislation, I decide to enter the defendant's name on the child's birth certificate and also appoint the payment of alimony in the amount of one subsistence minimum per month." She looked straight at Jason. "And I'm warning you, Mr. Reed, you can run away from responsibility, but the law will find you. If you do not fulfill your obligations, you will have to answer for it in court." Jason just shrugged as if none of this mattered to him. But Caitlyn knew the truth. He won't be able to just disappear this time. Chapter 5. Consequences of the Decision. The judge tapped her gavel, announcing the end of the session. But even after that, silence did not prevail in the hall. Everyone was still whispering, digesting the decision. Caitlyn Morgan took a deep breath. She won the case. Finally. She turned her gaze to Jason. He didn't look shocked or worried, rather annoyed. He stood up quickly and, without even looking in her direction, shook hands with his lawyer. Caitlyn guessed that he still believed he could escape responsibility. "Well," said her lawyer, Rebecca Sloan, closing the file folder. "It was expected. Now the main thing is to achieve the implementation of the decision." Caitlyn nodded. Winning a court case is one thing, but getting real payments from a person who does not work and has no official income is a completely different matter. Jason was about to leave when his wife, Amanda, approached him. She waited all this time in the back row, silently watching the events. Her face was stony, her eyes cold. "You have no idea how disgusted I am," she said quietly, but loud enough for everyone around to hear. "4 lawsuits, 4 women, and now I have to pay for your mistakes? Do you understand that you have completely ruined my life?" Jason tilted his head, trying to keep his composure. "Amanda, this is not the best place." "Not the best place?" She laughed sharply. "And where was the best place when you seduced one woman after another while I worked to provide for you?" She took a step back and balled her hands into fists. "We're breaking up, Jason, and I'm not going to cover your debts." This news came as a surprise even to Caitlyn. She knew Amanda was angry, but she didn't expect her to take such a step right here in court. Jason remained outwardly unmoved, but his hands clenched so tightly that his fingers turned white. "You can't just pick me up and throw me away," he said through gritted teeth. "I can, and already did," she answered. "Get ready to take care of your children yourself, because I won't do it anymore." Amanda turned and confidently headed for the exit. Jason stared after her, his self-confidence slipping away for a moment. He remained alone, without support, no excuses. Caitlyn got up and walked over to him. She no longer felt anger, only tiredness and relief. "You've backed yourself into this corner, Jason," she said. "Now it's time to take responsibility." He didn't answer. He only snorted contemptuously and left the hall, leaving behind a feeling of inevitable consequences. Caitlyn took a deep breath. She knew that this was not the end of her struggle, but it was an important step forward. And most importantly, now her daughter had an official father, and whatever he was, he couldn't just disappear anymore. And what do you think? Was the judge's verdict fair? Write your thoughts in the comments below the video. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next crazier thing.